So, this is the second time I'm giving a TEDx talk. The first one was just over 10 years ago, while still living in my disguise as a man. And it was called Never Give Up. You can go further than you think. And I did go further than I thought, hoped, and dreamed. I had tried to fight against my own nature for so long. I tried to live by what others told me I was, should be, and should become. I was in a prison of society's definition of what they wanted me to be. And it was only at the very brink of giving up that I finally faced my truth fully and completely and began my transition from living a lie as a man and started living my truth as a woman. And today I give you what I learned through my journey and in reflection of my past, that all of us should and must be free from definition. I'm going to try to convince you that we as human beings, regardless of gender, whether we are cisgender, transgender, gender non-conforming, or intersex, should refrain from defining what a man, woman, or non-binary person is, should or shouldn't be. Some of the things I say will be triggering because it involves tales of violence and abuse. So this talk comes with a trigger warning. Everyone still here? Under the patriarchal system of control and power that we live under, to the various degrees of extreme all around the globe today, we are taught to fear and hate those that the system deems as the undesirable others. We are also taught to conform and to behave in a certain way to achieve the desirable label of being normal. It is through the system's default setting that not all of us are able to acquire those achievements. We are born to be others. In Sparta, they threw away children that were born with large birthmarks, especially if they were born with a large birthmark on the head. They were deemed unworthy of being a Spartan. They were deemed to be unworthy of being a human being. They were flawed, trash. Later in history, children that were born with large birthmarks, especially on the head, were thought to be touched by the devil. They were put outside for animals to kill and eat, or simply put to death as they were born. They were also deemed unworthy, undesirable, a human trash. I learned about all of this when I was 8 years old, and my father took me to the barber to get a crew cut because he didn't like to have a feminine son with long hair. They pointed at the birthmark at the back of my head and laughed, and the barber said they would have thrown you out with the trash in Sparta. This is also true about red-haired freckled women. They were considered to be touched by the devil because of their fiery hair and the freckles, so they were burnt at the stake for witchcraft. I was also a strawberry blonde kid with freckles who learned to feel ashamed about my freckles and told everyone that these were just holes in my head when I was as young as 6. Their disdainful mark of being deemed unworthy, a flawed human being, has been used throughout history by creating fear and prejudice towards those that are deemed the others. Often those people are like the birthmarked children of Sparta or the red-haired freckled women in Europe in the Middle Ages, or anyone that was deemed to be different from the majority of the population. Just like thinking differently or seeing things differently, like being autistic or just artistic. Being queer in any sense of the word was warrant enough for persecution. And of course, in modern day Western society, the other has been deemed the horrible, frightening monster that must be eradicated at all costs. It is the trans woman. I am a ginger-haired, freckled trans woman with a birthmark at the back of my head, and time again I've been told that I am everything that is wrong and nothing that is right when it comes to being a human. I guess that's why I thought being an alien was a good choice when I was 10. When I was 9 years old, the bullying started because I was considered strange and feminine. Even my closest family kept on and on about how weird I was and why I couldn't just be normal. I was an introvert, shy, closeted kid who had overwhelming empathy for everything and everyone, and still believed in the good in the world, regardless of being beaten and punished for being me. When I was 11 years old, 2 months shy of turning 12, I was attacked by 8 boys my age. 4 were in my class. It was a savage and brutal attack, where they forced me to swallow rotten fish. I was beaten senseless, kicked in the head and all over my body, and some of those 8 had the idea of forcing that rotten fish carcasses down my trousers and inside me. I lost consciousness, and when I came about, they were gone. But so was a part of me. A part of me had died. The little strawberry blonde trans girl, with the love of the world and everything in it, had gone into hiding. And for the next years and decades, I tried everything to conform, just to become normal. It took me 30 years before I could speak about this with anyone, and another 10 years before I could speak about this publicly. And why do I speak about this? Not for sympathy, but I do it in the hope that people might see that I, as a tiny little autistic trans girl, with an endless thirst for knowledge, love of books, nature, and art, was no threat to anyone except the patriarchal system, and therefore punished, just as I was punished by my own father, my authority, for being too gay. This story, my story, is not a one-off story. It's a story of everyone, regardless of gender. Anyone that has failed to conform to the idea and notion of being normal. And every time we pass a law that restricts the freedom of transgender, intersex, and non-binary people, we make the room for all of us that much smaller. It creates a world where the idea becomes extremely narrow for man and woman to live a life free from fear. There will be no room for masculine women. There will be no room for feminine men. There will be no room for non-binary people, and there will certainly be no room for transgender people to live and thrive in. It will be a world full of hatred and fear and persecution. It will be a world of emotional and intellectual ignorance, filled with decay and death of the human spirit. The narrative that is being sold to us time and time again To control the feelings, thought, and opinions of the mainstream cisgender heterosexual people these days are always just a political spin, designed to sell a certain type of truth, regardless if it's based in any kind of truth. And let's just call it for what it is, a lie. A lie that is being sold to cisgender women that they must sell their bodily autonomy in order to feel safe, for they are under threat by men pretending to be women. This narrative is said over and over again in order for cisgender women to be afraid of transgender women and not seeing them as the women they are, but as predatory men. Scientific and medical organizations around the world tell us that trans women are women. And legislative legal statistic has shown that cisgender heterosexual men are the cause of harm to all women, cis and trans, in vast majority of cases. Statistics also show us that trans women, especially trans women of color, are 4 times more likely to be sexually abused and physically attacked, including murdered, than cisgendered women. Statistics also show us that 1 in 4, in some parts of the world, 1 in 3 cisgender women have experienced sexual or physical abuse sometimes in their lifetimes. And still, no man, or hardly any man, are convicted of those crimes. All those statistics prove that all women, regardless of the color of their skin, their religion or lack thereof, the country of origin, or whether they are cis or trans, are threatened by the same patriarchal system. The patriarchy feeds on the control and the subjugation of women, to have them conform to certain standards of the right way of being a woman, and to make absolutely sure that you are the right kind of woman. We are seeing more rules and regulations all around the world, internationally, where female athletes, never male, have to conform to medical examinations and scientifically proven faulty tests to prove they are the right kind of woman to compete. This has even gone so far as seeing legislative representative trying to pass laws so they would allow overwhelmingly male populated professions like coaches to perform genital examinations on young adolescent girls just to make sure that no trans girl would be allowed to take part. No trans women, and they have been allowed to compete for over 30 years, have ever won any national, international, Olympic or Olympic Games. Never. And just for example, out of 500,000 female athletes in the United States today, only 5 are trans. So where is the threat? Not from trans women, that much is true. Instead, the modern day trans women serve as a canary in the coal mine, a phrase that has been used before. And as she loses her right to navigate the world freely and without fear, so do all other women. The patriarchy has always thrived by controlling and forcing women to live in a rigid, tight box of existence. And transgender, non-binary, and intersex people have always been the nature's way of telling us that there are no boxes. The nature is chaotic and free, and is able to transform and evolve in whatever, whenever it pleases. Trans women have always been here, and they will always be here. if not just for humanity to see that regardless of facing persecution, hatred, abuse and death, we are who we are. We are born this way. And our only choice is to decide to live our truth fully and honestly and openly, regardless of the threats and rewards of living within the confinement of the patriarchy. There is no more FU to the notion of the all-ruling, masculine, male-dominant patriarchy than the thriving existence of the trans woman. I am a ginger-haired, freckled, autistic trans woman with a large birthmark at the back of my head. And my message is this to all genders. Being your authentic selves, living out and proud, means that you have nothing more to fear, nothing more to hide, and nothing more to prove. You can simply be, breathe, live, love, and even forgive the unforgivable, free from definition. Thank you.